The American College of Radiology,
Focused, forward.
together.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sopulu Anidobu. I'm a fourth-year medical student at the University of Illinois, and I'm currently the lead for ACR's Global Health Talks podcast. So I'm excited to bring you all a new episode today. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Iheke, who's currently a resident who is going to be an R1 at the University of Rochester's Diagnostic Radiology Residency Program. And he will be discussing with us today his journey with radiology and the global aspects that he's been able to explore.
Alrighty, hey, it's great to be here. As you said, my name is James Iheke. I'm originally from Dallas, Texas. I went to Texas A&M University for both my undergraduate degree as well as my master's in biomedical sciences. And then I was recruited over to UAB School of Medicine, where I did my MD and my MBA as well. And then after graduating, I did a year with the NIH through the Fogarty INSIGHT Research Program. And I was specifically working with Baylor on the TB Gaps program. And so this was a program where I was able to travel to Malawi, which is like Southeast Africa. And I was able to work on a project where we were trying to eliminate TB in HIV positive children. So my role in particular was kind of collecting data and evaluating how well local providers and which were pediatricians, both Baylor pediatricians as well as Malawian trained pediatricians and clinical officers who are kind of like nurse practitioners. I was looking to see how well they were able to interpret the pediatric chest x-rays, and then with the final goal of seeing where they were having trouble with their interpretations and then creating like education to kind of help fill in any gaps.
That's awesome. Okay. I want to take us back a little bit so that we fully understand the journey of how you kind of got to that experience. Um, when was the first time you kind of learned about the field of radiology, became interested in it? When was the first time you were exposed to radiology?
My first exposure to radiology was during my first year of medical school. During our pulmonology unit, my now mentor, Dr. Milner, gave a presentation on chest x-rays. And at the time, I was very interested in med peds, actually. My whole goal was the reason I got into medical school was because I was planning on curing diabetes and also finding the cure for pancreatic cancer. But then I did some research in Boston on medical oncology, and during one of the patient interviews while I was shadowing, I immediately called one of my mentors and was like, I realized I don't like talking to patients about medicine. This was like the summer of my first year or the summer after my first year of medical school. So then I was like, I have to find something else to do. So I initially shadowed surgery. I shadowed a transplant surgeon, and he was a nice guy, but I was like, I can't do surgery. I'm not a surgeon. And then I remembered my mentor, Dr. Milner, and how nice she was during her presentation. And so I reached out to her and asked her if I could shadow in the radiology department. And I loved it a lot. I remember my first day, it was just a very relaxing environment. In the reading room, they were playing music. I remember they were playing like Afro beats, which I was like kind of crazy. Yeah. Especially like I went to school in Alabama. So, it was, everybody in the room was, Alabama, and they were playing Afro beats and stuff. And so I was like, oh yeah, this is the place for me. And then from there, I met my other mentor, Dr. Jordan Perchik. And so then I started getting involved in radiology, and he was really involved in like diversity in radiology. And he was also really involved in global health radiology. He now even is the director of the UAB Global Radiology Program. But I remember and working with him, he put on a kind of like a talk where he brought in a radiologist from Cameroon, and that radiologist from Cameroon was talking about, how grateful he was for all the help he was receiving. And he kind of did like a roses and thorns kind of talk at like the end of his presentation, where he talked about like uh, things that he felt like he was doing well and things that he felt like he could get more help on. And one of the major things that he said he could get help on, which really impacted me and my journey, was he said that in Cameroon, he was like the only radiologist for a huge catchment area, of course. And he was an adult radiologist. And so he was talking about how there would he was expected to also read pediatric imaging. And there was, of course, nobody that he could ask for help. And so he said that if there was anything else he could do, he wished that he could either be a pediatric imager or have more pediatric imaging experience. And so, that kind of made me interested in pediatric imaging, just because there's a huge need. And the more that I kind of expressed that interest, around HCR, around SNMA, around RSNA, the more I realized that there's also a huge need for pediatric imaging here in the United States as well. So that's kind of how I got interested in pediatric imaging, global health, radiology, a long journey, but
That's awesome. No, that's awesome. So you talked a lot too about just like your ideas surrounding research, how you want to research a cure for pancreatic cancer, a cure for diabetes. You did research in Boston. How integral has research been to kind of your journey throughout medicine and what you see for yourself in the future as a radiologist?
um, I mean, it's been more integral than I think I give it credit for. I think research, even I wouldn't consider myself a heavy researcher. I mean, for 4 years in medical school, I did like what is it? Like trainee research experiences. I've never been like a lead on a paper or anything like that. I've always been getting research training as a new researcher for 4 years. So, I mean, I wouldn't say that I took research like heavily, but just the ability to find a topic and research it and kind of delve deeper, I think is really important. I've always been the kind of person who likes to get to the bottom of things, and I think research allows you to do that. In radiology, I mean, the research I've done has been like, diversity in radiology. And then I also did this project as well. And I mean, I kind of see myself more as like boots on the ground. I'm not really a paper writer, but I mean, if
Yeah.
to go to Malawi or go to South Africa or go to Zambia, I would be more than happy to go down and kind of do the work in those areas. Or even, like my family's Nigerian, even going to Nigeria and seeing what their imaging services are like there and seeing how I can kind of impact. But I mean, what I have learned also is you can have well intentions to go all over the world and do whatever, but the way you get the funding is by publishing papers. So it kind of goes hand in hand. And so that's a part that I need to kind of pick up more on.
Yeah. Where'd you hear about the Fogarty Scholars?
So, like I said, when I was in medical school, I was getting my MD MBA, and so I was doing the two concurrently, but I always envisioned taking a year of either research or citing some time off to continue my MBA kind of independently and finish that while also working on another project. So I always wanted to kind of take 5 years in medical school, if that makes sense, because my MD MBA was a 4-year program. And so my friend was telling me about the UAB Global Health. It was like a certificate program or so. And so then I was like, yeah, I'm interested in global health. I had already done a health mission in the Dominican Republic, and I had already realized that I mean, serving low and middle income and populations had always been, like serving the underserved had always been a dream of mine. I guess I had never put the two together to kind of also do it internationally. But after doing the research in the Dominican Republic, I was like, oh, there are, people outside of the United States that also need a lot of help as well. So I joined the Global Health certificate program. And in that program, they said they had funding from the NIH to send postdocs and pre-docs to do a global health research trip. But the issue is the goal of the program is to support low and middle income countries with resources. So one of the resources was, of course, people. So they send American research scientists to low and middle income countries for a year, and they send the low and middle income scientists to America for 3 months. It's kind of like an exchange program. So we are supposed to go there and, bring American resources and American knowledge, and they are supposed to come here and learn American resources and American knowledge. But the issue is that they couldn't find anybody who wanted to go, to a low and middle income country for a year. But I, of course, was like, yeah, I would love to do that. So then they said, but I told them, like, I am, in medical school. They were like, yeah, we getting medical students or physicians is like the hardest of all of the people that we're trying to get, because they were able to get some PhDs and stuff, but they also wanted to have clinicians not necessarily clinicians, but like they wanted to have medical students and MDs go as well. But I told them that I would, kind of need to know, because I have to either do this or apply to residency. And they were like, if you apply, then we'll help you get your application together so that you can go. And so then I trusted them and I applied, and they definitely helped me get my application together a lot. So, it was a great program. And when I submitted my application, it's a consortium of 5 different programs. So there's UAB, University of Maryland, Baylor, and I think maybe I'm missing a couple, but I emailed all the heads of the programs and just told them that I was interested in radiology, especially pediatric radiology, and that I'd be willing to go anywhere or do anything that involved pediatric radiology. And Baylor reached back out, and they said that they had a project. I was initially going to be looking at schistosomiasis and using ultrasound to kind of diagnose schistosomiasis, which ended up not being fruitful, just because of the area in Malawi I was in was kind of far from Lake Malawi. So we weren't getting a huge population of patients who were in the lake and getting schistosomiasis and then traveling all the way down to the long way where I was to get treatment. So it just didn't work out. But I was, so honored and so grateful. They really just kind of created a full project for me to go and be able to go to Malawi. Are you hearing? There's like a dripping. Are you hearing that? I can go close my window.
No, I have no idea. I'm only hearing you. Promise.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay. So like I was saying, sorry, cut that. So I was so grateful and so honored that Baylor kind of really designed a full project for me to do as a part of the TB Gaps project. And I was able to go down and live in Malawi for a year and work. And it was an amazing experience. I would recommend it to anybody for sure.
Yeah. For during your time in Malawi, what was like the biggest thing that you had to adapt to?
I don't know. The biggest thing that I had to adapt to, I think, would have just been living in Malawi. It is a low and middle income country, and Malawi is actually, if my understanding is that it's one of the countries that receives the most aid. It's one of the poorest countries in the world. And so it was very funny. So I was staying at the UNC complex. Like I said, they get a lot of funding and from universities and things. And so UNC built like kind of like a compound adjacent to the hospital. So you stay there and you have like a washer and dryer and everything. It comes with like a housekeeper and a gardener. It's really nice living, honestly. But so it's like, adjusting to living there when you have a maid is like not really scary. Yeah, but
Like, this is better than Texas.
yeah, so I mean, yeah, like the gardener would bring down papayas and stuff. Like it was,
Oh my
they had fresh
goodness.
avocados. It like I said, it was an amazing experience. Um, but where we were staying, I remember all the roads were like dirt roads, and the driving. We also they gave us a car, and they drive on the left side. So after a little bit of practice, they like give
Yeah.
me some rain to go out. And my friend, she's a surgeon. She was staying at the surgery house, and they have like two RVs. And so she had her own car to herself that she would like drive around on the left hand side by herself. It was crazy. But so I would think that some of the most difficult things was adjusting to just being there and like the driving and the road rules and stuff they have there. And then there was something else I was gonna say. The area I was staying in, it was very funny. All the roads were dirt roads in the area I was staying in. And so when I arrived, initially I was like, wow, it's like dirt roads everywhere. And then I quickly realized that if you go like 10 minutes down the road, it's like beautiful roads that have been donated by China and stuff. And so then it's like in the whole city, I think I was staying in the only dirt road area. And so I thought, yeah. So I thought that it was like, oh, wow, where am I? But it's really because of where I was. It was just where the hospital was for some reason. It was like the only road area. But yeah, there was, like I said, they get a lot of aid. So adjacent to us in this one medical complex, there was the Kamuzu Central Hospital, which is the Malawi hospital. And then there was the Lighthouse HIV clinics, which are, HIV clinics that were kind of donated. I want to say they were American run, but I could be wrong. And then there was the UNC complex, which was like where UNC sends all of its, they send like GI docs, they send radiologists, they send medical students, they send undergraduate students to do research. They pump a lot of papers. And then there was the Lions, which is the Lilongwe Institute of Orthopedics and Neurology, which was this big, beautiful building that I think was Swedish run, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And so then there would be people from Sweden and stuff who would come all the time and be from there. But yeah, it was a great experience. I mean, I wouldn't say that I had to like adjust to anything really. I mean, if anything, I had to adjust to coming back to America and like being here.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So after a year there, what did you see for yourself was the biggest impact that having radiologists travel to middle lower income countries had on just medical outcomes, treatment, diagnosis, things like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's really funny because every time I tell people I'm interested in radiology, the first thing they jump to is, oh, you could do that from home. You could do radiology from anywhere. And then I'm like, yeah, I want to, go to low and middle income countries and like support imaging for children. And they're like, oh, wow, that's a crazy twist on radiology. And it's like, yeah, like, UNC, they have a great global radiology program. And I was lucky enough to kind of sit in on their tumor boards. Like people in low and middle income countries are still getting cancer and they're still breaking bones and they are still needing surgeries, but they don't have radiologists. And so it's like the surgeon is going in blind sometimes or like with limited pre-surgical planning. The cancers are having limited diagnostic workup. So yeah, that's kind of what I saw, is that there is a huge need, especially like I said, for pediatric radiology. um, it's so integral to medicine, in my opinion, radiology is. And so to be able to practice medicine without a radiologist, to me, is crazy. Because it's like you're going into every case blind, and in these low and middle income countries, like the cases, the pathologies are so much more advanced, and they're so different than what you see in America, just because of they're not able to get treatment right away, and so the cancers are bigger and the tumors are larger, and they're more developed, and the masses are bigger. And even in the TB clinic, they're reading chest X-rays, and one of my mentors, Dr. Otero, he reads. He's at CHOP, and he reads pediatric imaging for the TB GAPS program, and then he also, if I'm not mistaken, reads for Doctors Without Borders. So they also need imaging too, and they're also trying to diagnose chest findings and things like that. And it's like they call it specialized imaging services for a reason. And there's a reason that radiology has so many subspecialties of breast, pediatrics, abdominal, MRI, ultrasound, because you need like real training to kind of use all these images, to kind of interpret these images. And so that was the biggest eye-opener for me, for sure, is like there are hospitals and institutes in America who are doing great work reading remotely, like UAB does, and I know some other programs that do too, but like going there and teaching people how to read and interpret imaging, and helping people who are boots on the ground, like the Baylor clinic that I was working at, which TB GAPS is a part of Baylor, the pediatricians and stuff, like they were great. And I'm not trying to say that they didn't have, knowledge to interpret the X-rays and stuff like that. But I mean, my research found that their ability to accurately diagnose TB from chest X-rays decreased as the, patient got younger. So that means, and it didn't decrease like drastically. They were still doing a great job. I'm not trying to say that they weren't doing a great job, but that means that like small children, small patients, it's harder to interpret imaging. And it's like that for anybody. Like even in the United States, there are huge disparities in pediatric imaging. And it's because, children are not small humans. They are a beast in their own, and like you really do need to have specialized training to interpret the imaging. That's kind of what I would add, is that there's a huge need for imaging worldwide.
And I think you brought up a good point of like training people to also be able to do the work themselves. Like growing up from an immigrant household, my parents are Nigerian, so I've also helped globally with medical stuff. And there's always this conversation about like white savior complex, things like that just come in, do work, get their research papers and leave. I think it's so important to empower communities to also be valuable for their own people too. There's people there that are ready to learn. So I think it's really important what you guys were doing with TB GAPS and the other programs, UNC, UAB, Baylor, bringing people there that are going to train future physicians in those countries to continue doing the work.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, like right now, if I'm not mistaken, UNC is trying to develop a radiology program, because if I'm not mistaken, there was like one Malawian radiologist, and then the other radiologist was like a volunteer from out of the country. So there was like two radiologists in Lalong at the time, and neither of them were pediatric trained or fellowship trained at all, if I'm not mistaken. But and then even the MRI scanner had like a huge metal artifact in the middle of it, and it was very interesting to see. Yeah, it was very funny. But you had to just kind of, it would distort every image was distorted anyways, and then you're like trying to look around it. But Yeah. And then even I'm lucky because like, like you said, I matched at University of Rochester, and there are people there who are working to create radiology programs in Zambia and other places. And so like that is definitely the kind of work that I see myself looking to do. And I even kind of thought about, even here in the United States, like there are no HBCUs that have a radiology program. And
Yep.
so how amazing would it be to be able to develop a radiology program here for HBCU, because there are huge disparities in, the racial demographics of radiology as a specialty. And I feel like that would really support the diversification of radiology.
100%. Yeah, I think that is also very, very important. So for people like me, or even younger than me, M1s, M2s, M3s, who want to get more involved in global health, you found an amazing project through your institution. Not all institutions have access to resources like this. So what would you recommend for students that are just looking for more opportunity to get involved?
Uh, I mean, I think first and foremost, you have to kind of put yourself out there. Like the only reason I was able to find this project is because I joined the Global Health Certificate Program. But I also joined the SNMA Global Health Program, and I think that's a great way to get involved. And then, if I'm not mistaken, the Fogarty program that I did, the application is open now, the NIH Fogarty INSIGHT Program. Uh, they have a number, like there's, I want to say 9 different programs, and so mine was a consortium that included my school, but some of the other ones, like my friend who's a surgeon, she was at Morehouse, and then there were people from all over, from all different schools and programs. So just kind of see what the NIH has to offer. um, I would say, see if if your school has any kind of global health programs that they offer. Um, and then also the Fogarty program, the Insight program, if I'm not mistaken, even though it is a consortium of, it's a consortium that includes my school, I believe they opened the program up to minority students from any school, but don't quote me on that. If you're seriously interested, which I think you should consider it, not necessarily you, but I mean like anybody who is seriously interested should consider it. Um, Reach out and see what they have available for you. And something else I wanted to say on that topic was, I think that in medicine, a lot of times medical trainees are kind of scared to deviate from the status quo path of like undergrad and then med school and then residency. So I graduated medical school and then took a year to do this without, like, I didn't apply with my class, and then I applied for this instead. And then, so I was kind of off cycle by a year. And, people would tell me that I was crazy for that. And they would say that like I was never going to match because I was kind of taking a gap year in my training and things like that. And they would tell me how bad it looked. But I can say, um, it was something that came up in like all of my interviews, and people were literally blown away. I remember during the interviews, like it would, I don't want to say jar, but it would like, it's like you and the interviewer, and you guys are trying to remain composed, and everybody's trying to be, on top of it. And then I'd be like, yeah, I'm in Malawi, I'm doing this amazing work, and they would be like floored, and it would like kind of derail the interview. It would no longer be them like, trying to throw questions at me, but they would start just being like, oh, just, like this interview's over. Tell me what you're doing and tell me more about it. And so like that was an amazing experience. And I mean, even interviewing in Malawi, like, yeah, it was a low income country, but I was at Baylor. I was at the Baylor Clinic, and I was at the UNC compound. So I mean, I still had like really stable Wi-Fi and everything. There was only one interview that I did not have Wi-Fi. Malawi gets their Wi-Fi, if I'm not mistaken, from Mozambique. Mozambique was having some sort of either natural disaster or some issue. And so there was no network the whole day. And so then I ended up having, and it was raining terribly, I remember, and I was like frantic an hour before my interview trying to find network. And so I went to the Baylor Clinic head of IT, and he found a Starlink in the lab.
Wow.
So I was able to set up there like just in time for the start of the interview. But I mean, other than that, there was no problem. So I think taking time away from training, I think, first of all, it kind of refreshes you and it kind of helps you remember why you're going into medicine and what you're doing it for. And then also, I think it only makes you a more interesting applicant and person. And it, diversifies your background. And I think that just kind of only increases your chances from success.
Yeah, absolutely. You are an asset. All right. Well, thank you so much, James, for coming and talking to us about this amazing experience. I know before I even met you that I'd never heard of it before. And now that I've heard of it, I wish I knew about it sooner, because for anyone interested in global health, this is like the perfect opportunity to just be involved, boots on the ground, make some serious impact in the field. So thank you so much for coming and sharing this story with us. For anyone that's watching that's interested, we're going to link the Fogarty Scholars application below, which is open now for the 2026-2027 year. And is there anywhere you'd like people to contact you, James, if they have further questions?
You can send me an email. My email is first name, last name @gmail.com. So that's jamesiheke@gmail.com. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. It was a great experience. I went to Malawi, but they send people all over the world. And what will I say? I mean, while I was there, Trump tried to cut the funding and yada, 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 yada. But I mean, we ended up getting our funding back, and everything ended up being okay. So I think global health, I think it's struggling now, but my understanding is that it kind of goes up and down. So I think if you're interested, just keep your interest. And I definitely think anybody should apply for the program. And it was honestly the best year of my life. So I mean, you deserve to go.
Yeah. Thank you so much again for being here.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
All righty. We will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you, everyone that tuned in. Bye, everyone.